It only lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks of summer vacation at her aunt's house in a private villa community on the shores of Lake Washington. Chloe was only 16, too naive to understand the frightening silences of adults or the way wealth could sometimes reek of rotting secrets. Her parents had insisted. "It will be good for you, Chloe. Aunt Evelyn seems so fond of you." She arrived at her Aunt Evelyn's luxurious villa with no other children around. A mansion of glass and cedar nestled among towering trees with a lush green lawn that stretched down to the water's edge. The first night passed peacefully. So did the second. But then on the third night, at 1 in the morning, her bedroom door creaked open. At first Chloe thought she was dreaming. But no, someone was entering. It was Aunt Evelyn. She wore a long white silk nightgown, and her face shimmered strangely in the moonlight streaming through the window. It was as if thousands of tiny crystal fragments were embedded beneath her skin, emitting a cold, ethereal light. She smiled a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Wake up, Chloe. I have something to show you." Chloe obeyed mechanically, her mind still hovering between sleep and reality. Aunt Evelyn went to the antique cherry wood wardrobe and opened a drawer she had never seen before. Inside, she took out another white dress, a breathtakingly beautiful one, like a miniature version of a magnificent wedding gown. "Put this on," she whispered. "Are you ready?" Ready for what? Chloe didn't dare ask aloud. She took the dress. The fabric was cool and unusually soft. The dress fit her perfectly, as if it had been tailored just for her. Aunt Evelyn held out her hand, her fingers icy cold. "Don't be afraid." The moment Chloe took her hand, the entire room vanished. There were no more cream-colored walls, no Persian rug, no soft bed. Instead, the hardwood floor beneath her feet dissolved, replaced by a dark, rippling surface. She was standing on water. Before her, a path that seemed to be woven from moonlight floated on the lake's surface. Somehow they began to walk on it. Chloe could no longer feel her feet. She was like a puppet pulled along by her aunt's ice-cold hand. Her aunt walked ahead, the hem of her white gown gliding over the water without a single ripple. At the end of the path, an ethereal blue light emanated from deep below. As they drew closer, Chloe held her breath. Beneath the lake was an entire city. Towers of luminous coral, spiraling structures that seemed carved from pearl and obsidian. Beautiful figures glided through the silent city. Men and women all dressed in white gold and silver. Their eyes sparkled as if they held stars. And they were waiting. All of them were looking up, looking directly at her. A path opened through the crowd, a solid carpet of water stretching towards the center of the underwater city. Aunt Evelyn squeezed her hand tighter. "It's for you." Chloe stepped forward, pulled onward. Aunt Evelyn followed right behind. At the end of the path, a man also dressed in white was waiting. His gaze was piercing, powerful, and ancient. He held out his hand. Aunt Evelyn placed Chloe's hand in his, then silently stepped back. "This is your destiny," she said simply. "You won't regret it." A strange music humming like the sound of flowing water, but without any instruments, vibrated through the space. Not a word, not a question, not a consent was given. A ceremony began in silence. The man watched her like a predator eyeing long-promised prey. Aunt Evelyn had blended into the crowd and disappeared. The man raised his hand. Another equally beautiful person approached holding a flat box. He opened it. Inside were 2 rings, one as black as night, the other transparent as if carved from frozen water. The man took the crystal ring and gently slid it onto Chloe's finger. A biting cold immediately invaded her body, as if a frozen entity was seeping into every fiber of her flesh, every blood vessel. He offered the other ring to Chloe. Her hand trembled as she placed it on his finger. The marriage was officiated. Then he placed his hand on her cheek. Everything blurred. Her body swayed as if pulled by an invisible force. The faces around her faded, and then there was only him, close, his eyes fixed on hers. The marriage was consummated. Something inside her was torn, and something else was taken. When Chloe opened her eyes again, she was in her bed in her aunt's house. There was a dark stain of blood on the sheets. The white wedding dress was gone, and on her finger a transparent ring, as if made of pure water, rained. Aunt Evelyn knocked on the door. "Are you awake?" she asked, her tone as casual as if nothing had happened. Chloe didn't answer. She stared at her finger at the undeniable proof of the nightmare she had just lived. Aunt Evelyn entered calmly, sat on the edge of the bed, her hands placed on her knees. "What happened last night," she finally said, "was very important." Chloe slowly looked up at her aunt, her throat tight. She could only whisper, "Auntie, why did you take me there?" Aunt Evelyn took a light breath, as if she had rehearsed this speech 1,000 times. "So that you will never want for anything. So that one day when I am gone, you will inherit everything. The houses, the businesses, everything I have built. And because I love you very much, you will be protected, honored, and will never have to fight for your place in this world." She leaned down, stroking her cheek. "It's an honor, my dear. You will understand later." Then she stood up, as if the conversation were a minor detail, and left the room, leaving Chloe alone with the silence and the cold ring on her finger. When Chloe left her bedroom the next morning, the ring was gone. Her finger was bare. She frantically felt for it, but there was nothing there. Yet the feeling of it remained an invisible weight, a ghostly coldness that seemed to have seeped into her very bones. Only those who had set one foot in that underwater world could see it. Those who, like her aunt, had signed, had offered, had made a covenant. And then she heard it for the first time. Not with her ears, but as an intrusion deep within her mind, a low, resonant voice like an echo from the bottom of the lake. "You are mine." The 2-week vacation ended. Aunt Evelyn drove her back to her ordinary suburban home with a sweet smile and a thick envelope of cash for school supplies. Her parents were overjoyed, praising the generosity of their wealthy aunt. No one asked any questions. No one noticed the shadow behind Chloe's eyes, or the way she shivered when a light breeze blew. Chloe returned to high school, to the noisy hallways, algebra tests, and meaningless locker-side gossip. She tried to cling to that normality like a drowning person to a piece of wood. But the nightmare did not stay at the lake. It had followed her home. A few weeks went by and her body began to betray her. Her breasts became sore, uncomfortably swollen, too heavy for a 16-year-old girl. The uniform blouse of her private school grew tight, but her stomach remained flat. At first, her mother didn't notice. She simply thought her daughter was developing into a young woman. "You're looking fuller these days, Chloe," she said with a smile. But a month later, the questions began. "What are you eating at school? Are you in pain anywhere? Have you had your period this month, Chloe?" Chloe remained silent. She didn't know how to answer. She didn't understand what was happening to her. That evening, for the first time, she felt nauseous, the churning nausea of a pregnant woman. The next day, she vomited violently in the school bathroom after lunch. That night, her mother sat on the edge of her bed, her expression grave. "Tell me the truth, Chloe. Have you been with a boy? Are you pregnant?" Chloe shook her head frantically, tears streaming down her face, unable to speak. Her mother's voice rose, filled with desperation and anger. "Well, are you getting your period? How long has it been? Aren't you ashamed? Do you want to kill this family with shame?" she cried. And Chloe cried too. When her mother took her to the hospital, the test results were as clear as day. "No signs of pregnancy detected," the doctor said in a detached voice, flipping through the pages of her chart. The blood tests were all normal. The ultrasound showed a completely empty uterus. The cold of the ultrasound gel on her belly seemed to linger, a cold emptiness reflecting the emptiness on the screen. Her mother looked at her with a mixture of relief and disappointment. She thought her daughter had lied, or worse, was imagining things. Time in the spirit world and the physical world are not the same. Pregnancy in the two worlds is not measured by the same ruler. What takes months in this world can last only days in the world below. That night, her abdomen cramped violently. The contractions were abnormal, gut-wrenching. A warm stream of liquid flowed down between her legs. She screamed, but no sound came out. Her body writhed on the bed. She fell to the floor, and in her last breath before passing out, she heard that voice again whispering from underwater as clear as if he were right beside her. "It has been born. You are a mother now." It happened twice. Chloe had become a mother twice in the spirit world. Twice she was invaded by that deep cold, the slow expansion in her belly, followed by a dull, silent pain. She had 2 children in that invisible world. And the children, they never truly left her. They lived underwater, but their spirits were always entwined with hers. Sometimes in the middle of the day, amid the city's noise, she would hear them cry. Sometimes in class, while the teacher lectured on the Civil War. Sometimes on the bus, amidst the screeching of brakes and the chatter of other passengers. No one else ever heard them. When it happened, she would find somewhere to sit down, close her eyes, and call to them. She didn't speak the words. She just thought them intensely. And then something miraculous would happen. She saw nothing, but she felt a gentle weight on her chest, a warm breath on her skin. And most importantly, her breasts would swell. A flow of milk invisible but real. She was nursing. She knew that one of her 2 children was there drinking the milk from her body. One morning as she was getting ready for school, Aunt Evelyn was waiting for her at the door. She looked as stunning as ever in a navy blue business dress and pearl jewelry. She didn't ask how she knew her address. "Did they come last night?" her aunt asked, her voice calm. Chloe didn't answer. Aunt Evelyn came closer, adjusted her collar, and whispered, "That is the price of being a chosen bride. You belong to them. They nourish you with wealth, and you nourish them with your very life." Then she pressed $100 bill into her hand. "Never speak of this to anyone. They wouldn't understand. And you risk losing everything." Chloe put the money in her pocket, the cold crinkle of the paper on her fingers. Her life had been split in 2. One half was the normal high school student, and the other was a wife, a mother bound to a world she could never escape. Chloe was 22 when she met him. 6 years had passed since that fateful night. 6 years of living in a haunting dual reality. To the outside world, she was an art history major at the University of Washington, a quiet, intelligent girl with a distant sadness in her eyes that no one could explain. But in her secret world, she was still the wife of an underwater entity and the mother of invisible children. And since the age of 17, Chloe had grown accustomed to a strange and terrifying phenomenon. Sometimes she only had to think of something with an intense longing, a designer handbag she saw in vogue, a pair of sapphire earrings she browsed online, or even a stack of cash to pay for the next semester's tuition. And the next morning the object would appear. It would be placed neatly on her bedside table or arranged perfectly on her pillow without a word of explanation. At first she had tried to rationalize it as strange coincidences, but as it kept happening she understood. This wasn't magic. This was him. The invisible husband, the consort from the bottom of the lake, whom she had never truly left. He was showering her with gifts always beautiful and always expensive, a constant reminder of his ownership. One day passing a jewelry store in downtown Seattle, she simply whispered while looking at a diamond necklace in the window, "With that, I would never be looked down on." The next morning, the necklace was there identical in a black velvet box on her dresser. She never wore it. She hid it deep in a drawer as if it were evidence of a crime. She never told anyone about it. His name was Ethan. There was nothing supernatural about him. He was an engineering student, practical, logical, with a warm smile and hazel eyes that always shone with curiosity. With him, Chloe rediscovered a normal life, a life where everything had a name, a weight, a tangible existence. They met in a campus coffee shop fighting over the last available power outlet. He gave it to her. Their conversation started from there, easy and natural. But even in that temporary peace, the other world was never far away. Ethan said she was mysterious, a little distant, but he liked that. How could she explain to him that behind each of her silences was another world screaming? that sometimes she was quiet, not because she was thinking, but because she was listening to the cries of a child only she could hear. Since Ethan started dating Chloe, he felt something had changed in his life. His studies, which had always required his utmost effort, suddenly became surprisingly smooth. Complex concepts suddenly became easy to understand. He unexpectedly received a prestigious summer internship at Microsoft, for which hundreds of other students had fiercely competed. Doors he once thought were slammed shut now opened automatically. Ever since she came into my life, everything has opened up, he thought to himself and smiled. He had never believed in stories about lucky stars or a woman bringing prosperity to her husband. But now it was too obvious. There was no other explanation. He felt like he was living in a dream. Without much thought, he decided to speed things up to commit to a more serious relationship. He didn't want to lose her. To him, it was clear Chloe brought him luck, and if he had to do whatever it took to make sure she would stay by his side, he would. On a clear May evening, he took her to Gasworks Park, which offered a panoramic view of Lake Union and the city skyline. As the sun set, painting the lake red, he got down on one knee. "Chloe," he began, his voice trembling with emotion, "you are the best thing that has ever happened to me. Everything in my life has been better since you've been in it. I can't imagine living without you. Will you marry me?" Chloe stared at the ring he was holding, a simple diamond sparkling in the twilight. It was real and tangible. It belonged to this world. She accepted. She accepted because she also needed to escape. Because she longed to believe in love in a normal life, in the possibility of happiness in the world of sunlight. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be easy. She knew that saying yes to Ethan was an act of betrayal against another vow, a vow made in silence, under the cold water. She was gambling with her soul, and she prayed it wasn't a choice that would drown them both. Their wedding night took place in a luxurious hotel room overlooking Elliott Bay, with the sparkling lights of Seattle spread out below like an artificial galaxy. Chloe was still a virgin. At least that's what she had always believed, and that's what she had told Ethan. He had been respectful and patient, promising to wait for this special night. But when the moment came when Ethan gently embraced her, she felt an old pain rise up. It wasn't the physical pain of a first time, but the pain of memory, a ghostly tearing that her body had recorded from the night under the lake. Ethan stopped, too surprise evident on his face in the soft light. "Chloe," he whispered, confused. You're not bleeding, but you said—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the question hung in the air between them. She turned her face away, unable to look him in the eye. She felt as if someone else was watching them from a dark corner of the room. She could feel his presence, cold and possessive. The husband of the water, the first, the real one. He was here witnessing her betrayal, and his presence was like a thin layer of ice coating the room. That night, Ethan was the first to have a dream he couldn't understand. He shot up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, his mouth open in a scream, "Water, there's water everywhere." Chloe sat up, her heart pounding. Ethan was panting, his eyes wide with terror. And there was a man looking at me. He was standing under the water, but he wasn't wet. He told me to stay away from you. Chloe didn't answer, but in her heart she knew. The covenant was not dead. It had merely been sleeping, and now it had been awakened. The following months were a blur. They were married. They lived together in a lovely apartment in Capitol Hill. But Chloe couldn't get pregnant. Every time they tried something seemed to break the moment. Sometimes she would feel a strange warmth in her belly, followed by a dull ache, and then nothing. It felt as if an invisible cold hand was intervening, extinguishing any spark of hope before it could ignite. One April morning, Aunt Evelyn passed away. She died peacefully in her sleep in her luxurious penthouse. When Chloe arrived, urgently called by a distant relative, a strange feeling still lingered in the air, a feeling like a thin smoke that no one could see, but that her body recognized. A lawyer was waiting for her. "She left everything to you," he said without looking up from the papers in front of him. But Chloe was no longer listening. No one in the family was really surprised that Chloe inherited Aunt Evelyn's entire massive fortune. Everyone knew that Aunt Evelyn had always favored her above all others. But there was something else. Aunt Evelyn had never married. She had never had children, not even a hint of romance was known in her life. Yet she always shone. She shone with success, wealth, and a powerful network of connections. Her living room was always full of people except for love. Now Chloe understood why. She had traded love and family for the protection and prosperity of the underwater world. And she had set Chloe on the exact same path. In the following weeks on the surface, things seemed to improve. The inheritance made their lives incredibly comfortable, and Ethan's career took a surprising turn. Influential clients, big projects seemed to find him by chance. But Chloe knew. She could feel it. It was him. Her first husband was blessing her new life, a way of asserting that even Ethan's prosperity came from him, that everything they had belonged to him. Eventually, Chloe did get pregnant. The pregnancy test showed 2 lines. The symptoms were all there. The doctor confirmed it. Ethan was ecstatic. But after only a few weeks, she started bleeding. The doctor could find no cause, no explanation. Then a second pregnancy with the same result. At the same time, she constantly dreamed of the lake. She dreamed of her eldest son, her firstborn, from the invisible world now almost the size of a young boy. He would rise from the water, and every time in that dream, he would place a small cold hand on her belly. "It is not welcome here," the boy's voice echoed in her mind, a small copy of his father's. "I am the first. I am the heir. It will not be allowed to pass." The boy would press his hand into her belly, and his image would dissolve into the water. Chloe would wake with a start, and she knew that the fetus inside her was gone. Chloe became a living tomb. Her womb refused to carry anything that did not come from the water. And Ethan, he didn't understand. "Why us? Why is this happening to you? To us?" he would ask in desperation. But Chloe could say nothing. How could she explain something so insane? 5 years passed in a vicious cycle of hope and loss. And then Ethan started to get sick. It began with a pervasive fatigue. Then came the inexplicable aches and pains moving through Ethan's body like ghosts. Doctors talked about neurological disorders, perhaps a viral infection, chronic stress, post-viral fatigue syndrome. But no diagnosis was certain. The tests were all normal, the analyses showed nothing abnormal, and every night it got worse. Ethan gasped for air in his sleep. He would wake with a start, clutching the sheets, his teeth chattering. "I'm so cold, Chloe." He would whisper, his breath forming invisible white clouds in the warm room. "I'm so cold." Chloe knew. This was not an illness. This was a deliberate sabotage. She saw it in her dreams. The husband of the water. He circled a sleeping Ethan like a vulture circling a still warm corpse. "He has taken what is mine," his voice hissed in her dreams. "He sleeps in the bed I prepared. He eats the bread I provided. He touches a body that is not his." Chloe would wake up in tears, but she could say nothing. Who to tell? Who would believe her when she tried to vaguely hint at these things to her family? They just shook their heads. "You're too stressed, Chloe." "Ethan is just tired. These kinds of illnesses are often psychological. You should pray more." Your Aunt, God rest her soul, she would have known what to do. What an extraordinary woman. And that's where it got complicated, because even now, after she was dead, everyone still revered her aunt. She lifted this whole family up. She was a woman of light, of power. But Chloe knew the other face, the face of the night, the face of the lake. And every time she tried to say something, she was met with collective admiration. They would cut her off. They told her she was ungrateful, so she stayed silent, and Ethan continued to fade. He barely spoke anymore. He suffered from successive crises, sudden dizziness, nightly convulsions. A few weeks later, a neighbor stopped her at her door. "Your husband doesn't look well at all, Chloe," she said, her eyes full of genuine concern. "His face has changed. Would you like me to take you to see someone?" The neighbor didn't explain further, but there was an urgency in her voice that Chloe couldn't ignore. She nodded in desperation. The next day, they didn't go to a hospital. They took a taxi to an old neighborhood in Fremont, stopping in front of a small, unmarked church, squeezed between a thrift store and a laundromat. Inside, there was only one man, a pastor with bright, deep eyes. As soon as Chloe sat down on the hard wooden pew, before she could say a word, something inside her broke. She started screaming. Her body tensed, arched, then writhed on the floor as if something wanted to escape her or drag her into an abyss. She screamed, growled, cried uncontrollably. Then she started to convulse. The pastor took a step back, his face calm but focused. "This is no ordinary spirit," he said to the horrified neighbor. "This is not a simple case of possession. This is an invisible covenant signed in the depths of another world." From that day on, the battle began. A war without swords, but with all-night prayer sessions, days of fasting, and sleepless nights. With every prayer, Chloe felt something resist, as if a part of herself wanted to hold on to that bond. She vomited horrible things, black hairballs, small damp objects that looked like seaweed. Each deliverance was followed by retaliation. The husband of the water became more present, more furious. He appeared in Chloe's dreams, screaming in her ear, paralyzing her in her sleep. He threatened to burn everything she loved. He threatened to take back everything he had given. "You want to betray me," he roared in her head. "You think you can leave me like a mortal man. You have carried my line. You married me. You gave me 2 sons, and you think you can just erase me." But Chloe no longer backed down. Not this time. She had watched her husband's life be drained away bit by bit. She had seen her own womb become barren, and now her eyes were open. She was no longer the silent child led down to the lake. She was a woman at war for her soul. Months passed. The prayers continued. The pastor now spoke of a process of reclaiming spiritual territory inch by inch. He said she was not alone. In each session, she vomited something deeper. Shiny black shells and a lot of water salty and cold. The pastor understood. This was not a normal spirit. It was a covenant embedded deep in her bloodline like an iron root. And this kind of bond could not be cut. It had to be uprooted. So he ordered one final fast. 3 days without food, only water and prayer. On the evening of the 3rd day, Chloe entered the church staggering. Her body was gaunt, but her eyes burned with a strange light. The prayer group was already there, and they had begun. Suddenly she collapsed. Her body crumpled to the concrete floor. Her breathing became erratic. "She's not breathing!" a woman screamed. The pastor rushed over. He placed his hands on her stomach, then on her forehead. And then he understood. She was no longer there. Chloe was standing somewhere else. She opened her eyes under the lake, and before her there he was. Her underwater husband, looking wounded and weakened. He looked at her like a man looks at a woman who once loved him deeply but is now leaving him. A look that was broken, angry, tender, and dangerous all at once. He held out his hand. "You are mine, Chloe. You swore an oath. You carried my children." She bowed her head, then looked up, her gaze firm. "No, I am free. Because I have placed my life in the hands of the one who is above all gods. I have given you enough. Now I take back what you stole. My life belongs to Jesus Christ." The man staggered. The underwater ground began to shake. In the real world, Chloe's body convulsed one last time. She let out a wild, inhuman scream. Some people backed away, some started to cry. And then something fell from her finger. A small metallic dry clink, like a ring hitting the floor. The invisible ring. The bond was broken, vanished. Chloe opened her eyes. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with air. She stood up. Her back was straight. She was free. In the following months, Ethan gradually regained his strength day by day. The light returned to his eyes. And Chloe found sleep again, long nights without tears, without whispers, without the cold of the abyss. One cannot make a covenant with the invisible world without consequences. What one accepts without understanding can become a lifelong prison. But even the most ancient spiritual chains can be broken when one chooses truth, faith, and resistance.